Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of GTM in the Tofu Bowl. Today I have Max Spanier, president of Sloane Staffing with me. He's been a veteran in the MarTech space and really excited to hear how the landscape's changed, how AI is affecting everything, and also I'm curious what it's like building a company with your wife. So excited to chat.
I one day I'll be writing a book on starting a business with your wife.
Was that actually, I'm curious, was that intentional or was that something that just kind of happened?
No, I not so I started a recruiting company, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of everything as we chat today. But I was at Adobe. I've been in enterprise sales in the MarTech space most of my career. I was at a demand gen software called Ion Interactive. I got recruited to Marketo. Marketo was acquired by Adobe. And my wife and I always wanted to be entrepreneurs. She started her career in recruiting. I had no clue what recruiting was, except like most people that recently graduated from college, you take an interview with the recruiting agency, seeing if that's something you would like to do. But we just fell into it. When I was at Marketo, I saw how hard it was for Marketo customers to find Marketo talent. So I started recruiting people on behalf of my customers so that I could close that deal for them. And as you know, every single MarTech platform, you need great people. So I started doing it for free, and the light bulb went off, and decided to start a business and try to make some money.
I always think that the best things happen kind of accidentally. And I always tell younger people in their career that the best way to build your career is to give away your time for free. So by helping people recruit the talent for free, you build your skills, you build the relationships, and I'm sure that's serving you now in the company.
Big time, big time. I mean, I wouldn't be where we are today without doing that, without without having Marketo on my resume, without, recruiting Marketo candidates for, big enterprise companies. I didn't really know what that looked like. So I essentially, I started this as a side hustle pretty much. Well, not pretty much, absolutely. While I was at Adobe, started, helping recruit. I wasn't getting paid, but I was developed, I kind of got my MBA in entrepreneurship without even really, you know, taking that leap of faith like most entrepreneurs do, right? I had the salary, I had the benefits, so there was really no risk involved.
Exactly. Yeah, you can kind of set it up so that taking the leap is the easiest path. I also
Yeah.
find, I don't know what you think about this, but everyone from the outside is always like, wow, you're doing your own thing, isn't that so scary? And you have kids, I have kids. I'm kind of like, no, once you do it, it feels like the least risky thing you can do if that's your personality.
Yeah, but it's also great, as a SaaS, you get funding and you have a little bit of cash to play with.
This is true.
you know, um, which I know you're smart with being a VC background, but this is 100%, my wife and I, but every day we wake up, like my wife's in the other room. My son just walked in from school. Our house is 5 minutes away from our office. Like, you can't beat this, right? You can't be building your own thing and, setting your own path.
I will also tell you there's a misconception around VC backed companies versus bootstrap companies. And the biggest thing I used to tell people when I was on the VC side is that if you take VC money, your chances of success go down exponentially. If you are bootstrapped, your chances of success, and that success looks different to everybody, but
Totally.
building something that is meaningful, that has value, that is valuable to you, high
Yeah.
likelihood of success. VC, it's a game of outliers. The expectation is that most of the companies will fail.
Are not going to work.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
your
Yeah.
personal success is pretty limited, but you're taking the big bet. And from a skills building perspective, you can't go wrong there. But I do think that it's definitely a different risk profile.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think it's funny you bring up the term success. Like, everybody has success differently. What I've found is, being happy, right? Doing something that you thoroughly enjoy, and coming from the marketing technology, like, this is just a language that I know. Like, at the end of the day, we recruit marketers for marketing leaders at B2B companies. So think, demand gen, marketing operations, account-based marketing. This is just a brain that I've always used selling marketing technology software. Now I'm on the other side, finding people to maximize the ROI of the MarTech investments that these, CMOs are making. So it's like I said earlier, wouldn't change it for the world. But I might be coming to you as you continue to scale and come work for you one day.
I will happily have you. I also love that you said happiness. My dad had this saying growing up that just always stuck with me. He always said happiness is an underrated commodity. And it's so true. I think people are always trying to chase the next thing as opposed to
Yeah,
just sitting
just
and
living in the
being
moment, living in the
happy.
moment, and taking that vacation and going to see your parents in Naples, and just being able to do those things that if you weren't an entrepreneur, it'd be hard to do, right? Happiness for us is we every year we go to Europe for 2 weeks and just unplug and
Yeah.
chill out. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't, own your own company.
Where's your favorite place you've gone?
I studied abroad in Barcelona, so Spain.
Nice.
Love it. We're going to this town called Marbella this summer. We rented a beach house and we'll be there for two
Ooh.
weeks. But I'll be working most of the time. But it's good to be working somewhere else.
I think I saw, I think I did not make this up, but somebody had once written WFB, working from beach. And I was like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, literally. And even the entrepreneurship thing, right? Like um, there's no such thing as a vacation. Like you bring your computer everywhere you go. Right? You're going to Naples to visit your parents. Are you going to leave your computer at home because it's spring break with the kids?
Definitely. I'm
So
not even taking off.
I bet, right? You're just in a new time zone with a new office screen behind you.
Get a little more sun and warm. Uh,
Right. Right.
I'm curious, you've been in the MarTech space for so long. How has it shifted over the last decade? What are you seeing as like kind of like the biggest changes?
AI tools. So this is my big bet right now is Clay. I think and we about 3 months ago we're in the final stages of being added to their partner program. We're trying, we take a very partner approach to this business. So like we have partnerships with Six Sense, we have partnerships with Marketo, so we support a lot of their customers and prospects as they go down this Martech journey, right? 3 years ago, if you asked big bets, I'd say ABM, right? Everybody's talking about everybody's, which is still never going to go away. Like that ABM isn't a facade, it's an overall strategy. It's just now, how are these internal teams really leveraging, this data and this intent, and how are you optimizing and orchestrating campaigns at scale? It's all sounds great, right? But it's really hard to execute. Um, but now bring in these tools like a Clay, where we're becoming a Clay agency, where we're going to be the first to market to recruit Clay engineers and go to market engineers for B2B companies. That's my big bet, right? I think that Clay is so early on right now. I think in 2 years, I think every single B2B company is going to have some sort of license to a Clay, because the biggest struggle right now in B2B, it's maximizing the time of the resources that they currently have, right?
Yeah.
So every go to in my opinion, and you come from the VC world, you've seen software companies in and out. The biggest struggle that I see is like, do we hire more sales people if we're from our go to market strategy, or how do we maximize the time in the day that they have to be more successful? So AI tools in the market like a Clay is just going to, take out hours and hours of prospecting time and hours of research per week per rep, where you can spend more time on the phone, crafting emails, sending LinkedIn messages to that ICP that's totally defined based on the criteria that you told it.
Could not agree more. I think that the do more with less piece is more pertinent now than ever. And I think that the last few years, what I also saw, and you're on the recruiting side, so you're probably getting a really front row seat to this, is that people, I think Elon and Twitter started this, but people are like, wait a second, we can get rid of 20, 30% of our team and not much
Do
changes.
more with
And I
less.
and I
Totally.
don't see people kind of rehiring them. One of the things I think you're really smart on the Clay piece, and that if you look at Salesforce was probably the original, and then Marketo and HubSpot and things like that. The way those companies grew was they're complex. They're very big, meaty products that can do a lot, but very complex. You needed to hire a Salesforce engineer or consultant agency to go and write Apex code and configure everything and set up the
Yeah.
vanilla canvas. And I can totally see the similar threads of it's complex to use Clay or tools like that, where there's a lot of orchestration. And having somebody who's an expert at that, I do think is going to become valuable. It's not even just ops, it's kind of the next evolution of ops.
It's right. It's ops with a go to market sales swing,
Yeah.
right? So we're seeing a lot of like Salesforce admins that are turning into go to market engineers. I'm seeing BDRs that just are really good with tech that have turned into this new type of profile. And the way that I think about things, like, when I first started this business, the term marketing operations was becoming really hot. Previously, it was marketing automation. You're a marketing automation manager. Then this term marketing operations, came into market probably 8 years ago. Then the next key term was ABM, account-based marketing. Think about when you were, supporting the software companies that you were working at with Signalfire. How many of them had ABM managers internally at their companies, or directors of account-based marketing? It was demand gen. It was marketing, right? So it's just that evolution, and trying to stay ahead of it is, where you become most successful.
One thing I'm seeing, I love your take on this. So I have a little bit of a beef with the term ABM because historically, account-based marketing has literally been what people call one to many, which is taking a broad segment of people that have shown probably no intent. They just fit a description. And we're going to create a campaign against these 200, 500 accounts that all look sort of similar. Maybe they're all healthcare companies above 1,000 employees. And
Yeah.
to me, that's not account-based. That's just broad segmentation. And I think what I'm finding is that there's a mental shift that has to take place with now these AI tools allow you to do true one-to-one account-based marketing at scale. But that's not the process that people have been used to.
Yeah.
So they have to kind of shift their head and then shift the process first, or sorry, shift the process second. But what are you seeing on that front?
Well, you showed me Tofu last week, which blew my mind. But having AI tools like that can help orchestrate. It's the whole do more with less thing, right? So we talked about earlier how marketing teams have been decimated since in the last 2 years with the X effect. Now it's instead of rehiring 4 demand gen people, let's hire one and make them successful with better technology and better process and better orchestration. But no, you're absolutely right. Like that now ABM isn't, you don't have 4 demand gen folks internally that one is doing one to many, one is doing one to few, one is doing one to one. Like you kind of have to like take it as it comes and prioritize the most high impact programs to feed the sales teams to be more successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also just think that ABM has the ability now to be more trigger based as opposed to more blindly shooting a bow and arrow based.
And what is intent, right? How do you define intent?
And
Um,
I think that depends on every person. This is the other thing that I find fascinating about this whole move from it was intent, now signals is the hot term, which I actually get because I think also intent was very black boxy.
yeah,
Signals to me feels more tangible. A signal is somebody came to my website,
yeah,
somebody changed a job, somebody just got hired as this role at this company, they created a job rec for this opening, somebody downloaded an ebook. Those are all signals that are actionable immediately versus
yeah,
intent was like this amorphous, they're showing some intent around your topic.
yeah,
But I think that now what I propose is that you combine signals with ABM. So the ABM program is triggered based off of somebody taking an action. It's a
yeah,
combination of demographic that fits your ICP, plus they've taken an action that shows that they're raising their hand enough to be enrolled in some kind of a campaign.
yeah. No, 100%. And my industry, recruiting as a whole, it has been doing ABM since probably when there was a phone book, right? Since the internet was invented. I mean, all around signals, you see a company that's hiring a specific job that you can help with, there's pain, there's an opportunity in there. Pick up the phone and call and say, hey, we have a better mousetrap, would love to help you out, right? This has been ABM, now it just has been coined, but we use a lot of those signals internally as well. Job changes, right? Like past, and I know Sixth Sense, like through our partnership with Sixth Sense, we're constantly interacting with the go-to-market team over there, and a lot of the intent that they use is previous Sixth Sense users going into a new place. That's one way to kick out the incumbent is, hey, I have a director of demand gen, a VP of marketing, a CMO that's used this at 3 other places. Chances are they're probably going to use this again. So let's get ahead of
Yes.
that.
And there's all those companies too that even just use that as like the single best signal of somebody who's been a champion for you before, somebody who's been a user, follow them wherever they go. I mean, even us as a baby company, we're already seeing that take place, which is
I was
amazing.
just going to ask you, like, I wanted to hear your perspective on that because you're just, really getting going now. Like you have, I think you mentioned 50 or so customers, but what's that look like, being in this market?
What I think is interesting is historically, marketing and sales tend to be short tenured roles in general, whether
Yeah.
you're an IC or an executive, more so than I think some of the other functions. And because of that, you have a lot more opportunity to quickly, and this is also on the company, to quickly build your champions and then make sure you're building a relationship enough to follow them around. And I think some of that you can do automatically. Some of it needs potentially a tool or some kind of process in place. But even at the stage we're already seeing that when somebody leaves their first company, if they go to another company that's a good fit, they're going to come and bring us in. And
Yeah.
that's amazing because now the goal for us and the goal which I would recommend to any company is you have to make sure you have multiple champions internally, because if one of them leaves, you don't want them to rip you out. You want to make sure you're still sticky in company A, but now you have an opportunity in company B, and that's how you can scale organically. The CAC is zero. The CAC for that company B is literally zero.
Right.
But the risk people run is you don't build up enough strong champions in company A so that when your champion leaves or gets laid off or anything like that, you're screwed.
That's why, like, having great people internally that understand MarTech, it's so important, not only for the company itself, right? The B2B SaaS, whatever, cybersecurity, Series D, for that company to be successful from a go-to-market standpoint, but for the vendor relationships that they're bringing on board. Because if they're not bought into, investing and learning new tools, let's face it, when that contract comes up, you're not being leveraged, probably not going to be renewed.
Absolutely. I had a question too for you. You were mentioning before that you go to market mostly via partnerships. And that's a motion I'm not as familiar with. And so I'd just be curious to hear what are some best practices when thinking about building out a partner channel, both in terms of how you approach it from day one, but also how do you enable your partners and how do you make sure that you're top of mind?
Yeah. So most recruiting agencies, I'd say, 99% of agencies, the only channel that they have is venture capital, right?
Yeah.
When you're at Signal Fire, how many times would you get hit up by a recruiting agency, say, hey, I want to help all of your portfolio companies hire great talent, right?
It's the one to many approach.
The one to many approach. So how we started this business. So I mentioned when I first started the convo, my wife has a recruiting background. I have a MarTech background. So we kind of flipped the script a bit and said, instead of doing what everybody else is doing, which is the one to many, one to few, where you're the one to few, let's define it as, company A has an enterprise AE role or a demand gen role or a software engineer, everybody's calling into those opportunities. What we did is we first went back to, coming from Marketo and that Adobe acquisition still being so recent. I just went back to all my buddies at Marketo and said, hey, if you ever have a customer that's looking to hire a Marketo admin, I know firsthand that if they don't, if that Marketo person leaves that business, churn risk is going to go up because, let's face it, Marketo is hard. It's the best platform in the country in terms of email marketing, but there's so many options now. It's almost like it's a commoditized technology. You have HubSpot, you have Inflection, you have Pardot, you have all these different options. So really, solidifying that if that person leaves, chances are, if they don't find somebody good, they're probably going to end up hiring somebody with another skill set, and that renewal is going to be at risk. Yeah. So that's on the CSM side. On the AE side, I knew firsthand, I've always been a new business seller. So I saw in deals, every single deal, and as any salesperson that's listened to this, if you're not talking about ownership, platform ownership, well, who is that person going to be? What does that team look like? I want to have a conversation with them so they understand what they're getting themselves into. When I was at Marketo, the biggest struggle of selling Marketo was, who's going to own this? We don't have anybody internally that's ever run Marketo. How are we going to learn it? What are we going to do? So the status quo, would come up a lot in deals because they said, well, let's just not do anything. It's going to be too hard to find a Marketo admin. So a long-winded approach, answer to say, we gave, right? We helped Marketo decrease churn by making sure that, a great Marketo champion would get backfilled quickly versus in 6 months when that renewal was coming up. We helped AEs, close new business because they wanted to hire a Marketo admin before they bought and signed that 2 or 3 year contract, right? So we just kept giving and giving, and then we'd start getting in return. We'd get pinged by reps saying, hey, I have this customer that's looking for X. Can you help them? It's going to make me look good if we can find somebody great in there. So then we parlayed that to 6 Sense, and we're the only recruiting agency in the 6 Sense ecosystem, because again, we help them decrease churn. We help them increase their win rates by making sure that they hire that 6 Sense person versus the other 3-4 ABM platforms that are in the market.
What I heard you do extremely well there too is you thought through the incentive alignment first. It was like, what does each person have at risk and what is their incentive? And let me go and map out the entire thing. You have even within just like a Marketo or a 6 Sense, you have the CSMs and the AEs. Then you have their customers. Then you have you guys. You kind of thought through all of those pieces and then put the puzzle together, which I think is how anything gets done.
Yeah.
The entire world with humans is all about incentive alignment.
Right. And the whole thing, Elaine, with that, it's like, what's in it for them? That's how I've really, thought about partnerships. It's not what, I know what's in it for me, right? Hiring a great person, getting a new customer, but how can I support them, which will obviously end up supporting us?
Exactly. Yep. I love that. In terms of your ongoing relationships when it comes to that kind of thing, how do you enable them with whatever they need to be successful with you guys? Meaning, like, how do you maintain the top of mindedness, and also, like, do you have to continually provide them collateral stuff?
Yeah. So we, Kaylin, who is watching, so she was brought on about 2 years ago, and that's been one of her main focuses, is like, what content are we sharing? What case studies are we putting in front of them? Because at the end of the day, our value is time and expertise, right? We're going to save that client a lot of time in the interview process. When we first jumped on here, you said that it's taking you forever to hire enterprise AE. You've talked to a ton of people. Essentially what we do for enterprise organizations is we just speed that process up. So our average time to hire is usually between 30 to 45 days, depending on the type of role. On average, we're seeing that to hire a great demand gen person, it's open internally for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, right? So we just keep feeding that into, Marketo's, the Adobe's, the 6 Sense go-to-market team, where it's just recognition, right? And then just being in front of them, go to the events, go to Adobe Summit, go shake hands, go take people out to lunch. Because at the end of the day, there is a big human element to what any business is.
Yes, it is still all about building relationships. I also think you are unique, at least from my external perspective, of having marketing within a recruiting firm, which also just shows your marketing background of knowing that nothing sells itself. You have to go and make sure that you're constantly in the conversation and being there where people are in the digital and physical world. So I also think that was smart to do that quickly for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, we also have like, we use email, we're big on marketing automation here. We invested in 6sense. So we use a lot of the intent signals. We're trying to understand job postings and when people leave positions, and when companies have high intent for recruiting services, to put campaigns in front of them as well. Because, it's that one to few approach versus let's just reach out to everybody that could be a potential fit. Right. But that's something that we did about 2.5 years ago. That was at the time in 2023 or 2020, late 2022, when we made the investment, we're like, shit, do we need this? Is it, but best investment that we've made, because we've grown leaps and bounds from that, initial investment.
It's like signal and noise, right? It's how do you reduce the noise and how do you go and hone in on the signal? So that totally makes sense to me too.
Yeah, big
What
time.
the one last area I wanted to touch on quickly with you is just, you mentioned earlier this rise of AI tools, especially targeting go-to-market teams. Are you seeing from a team construction perspective, whether that's different titles and roles or different kind of like how teams are sized or hiring trends? What are you seeing being kind of at the forefront of that?
Depends on stage. I'm working with a Series A company right now, hiring a director of growth marketing. What that means is marketing operations, demand gen, marketing analytics, AI, and they have, everything but content. Then you look at a little bit later stage, say B, C, then they start having bigger investments and bigger bets around the people to manage different technology. But I think, size of company here really matters, and belief in marketing. So a lot of technical founders, I'm noticing, they don't truly understand the need for the go-to-market engine. They're just really focusing on building a great product.
Yes.
But then when you have the more, revenue focused CEO, it's less, I wouldn't say less around product, but more around go-to-market, more around technology, more around AI. So, I hate using the word depends, but it really depends.
I love the adage too. If you've heard this before, first time founders think product wins, second time founders know distribution wins. It's interesting having just seen so many teams.
Big
You're right
time.
on the technical founders and
we,
just
we
nuanced.
we've gotten into, like, we found a little honey hole in YC recently, where we're working with a lot of earlier stage companies. Those are pretty seed, pre-seed, Series A, but we've met a lot of, like, super smart, whip smart technical founders that are really, they know that go to market's so imperative for them to be successful, and they're starting to think about this stuff early. They're starting to think about, like, hey, I built a great product. How do I take this to the next level? And Elaine, sales and marketing.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Amazing. Are you seeing teams getting smaller, or are you seeing teams for the most part relatively similar sized?
No, big time getting smaller. The days of 6-person demand gen team, or one person, like in 2022, I was working with about an 800-person company. We hired a head of marketing operations. We hired somebody that all they did was focus on Marketo. We hired somebody that all they did was focus on MarTech integrations. We hired 3 people on marketing analytics. That doesn't happen anymore, right? Now it's, let's hire one marketing operations person that owns Marketo, that can oversee integrations, and then one person from a marketing analytics standpoint, where it used to be 2, 3, 4, and maybe that head of marketing operations isn't there anymore. So it's like you have these layers I'm seeing are becoming non-existent. With organizations. So again, we talked about earlier, AI, doing more with less. That's going to be, I think that's going to remain true for the very foreseeable future.
And I think it's going to have a massive effect on middle management. I think that you're going to get a lot of these doers that are going to have a lot of tools that are their power tools, and they're going to be really savvy with how to deploy them and really act as a force multiplier. You're going to need some management to help set strategy and help orchestrate the people as well as the tools. But I think that layer in the middle, which got really bloated over the last 10 years, I think
Yeah.
that layer is going to be the most affected.
Big time. Totally agree. Which is good for us, good for you. I think the thing is like, companies are going to be more okay investing in firms like us because they know that they don't have 3 hires to do demand gen. They have 1, maybe 1.5 with a contractor, right? So they want to make sure that it's as close to what they're thinking as possible. And chances are that person isn't applying directly on LinkedIn to find that opportunity. Chances are that person is at a competitor, happy, didn't even know that this job existed. And here comes, Max and his team, coming to recruit you out of that cushy position into this, unknown opportunity with a big upside.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Well, Max, this has been so fun. We'll definitely have to do round 2. If anybody out there is looking to hire any kind of demand gen, marketing ops, or if you are one of those people looking for your next thing, talk to Max. He's amazing, but really appreciate it. This has been fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you next time.
See ya.